Okay, thank you. Hello everyone. Thank you for attending this session. And I'm Tongxin, a PhD student from Space-Time Lab UCL, and I'm so delighted to talk about my work about identifying optimal scales for spatial-temporal crime clusters. Here, the study motivation is that the spatial temporal scales are quite significant for either detecting the appropriate crime concentrations in space and time, known as the spatial temporal crime clusters, following the real world phenomenon, and can help to build a tailored crime intervention tactics. And although previous work denoted that crime patterns are distributed in small scales of space and time, however, previous work about detecting such crime patterns are limited by the statistical processes, such as Knox test, which lacking the ability of detecting the shapes, distributions, and the densities of the spatial temporal crime patterns. And the selection of the scales is either arbitrarily defined without any correspondent performance index or ignored from the past studies. So then the objective of this study mainly focuses on identify the optimal spatial and temporal scales for crime clusters, which will be approached by density-based clustering methods. And the aims are achieved by meeting the following works. First, two density-based methods called STDB scan and ST-optics are compiled and used to extract the crime clusters. Second, based on the former methods, to select the optimal scales by comparing the performance index across the iteration of various parameters in the algorithm. Third, output the result of crime clusters with the optimal scales in space and time. The methodology part starts from the analysis framework, which is following the objective part step by step. First, we input the crime incidence as the point data to the ST clustering methods, and then we put the parameters in algorithms to iteration while calculating performance index for every clustering result. At last, we output the result based on the best performance index. Here we introduced the two clustering methods, the STDB scan and ST-optic. So the basic idea of these two methods are the same, because they are all density based. However, the optics, ST-optics can still extract from a density varied database, because the optics create an augment ordering of the data to optimize the choice of cluster structure, and three parameters called SMRD, TMRD, and mean points are introduced here. First, in terms of crime clusters, the SMRD refers and the TMRD refer to the spatial scale and the temporal scale respectively. And the mean points means the median numbers of the incidents in a cluster. And the second, the evaluation index. Here we choose the dB index, which known as the Davis Baldwin index, which is kind of an evaluation of the inter-class distance and the intra-class distance. So following the definition, a lower dB index denotes a better result. The case study is from Vancouver, Canada. The data set was obtained from the Vancouver Police Department, which is open source and published on the data website of the Vancouver city. It comprises spatial and temporal information and neighborhood information and the types of the crime incidents. Here we choose the breaking and entering residential of Vancouver in 2010 as a test data. Overall, it shows roughly 3,000 burglary incidents were reported to the city police department in 2010. And in our algorithms, the parameters called the SMRD iterates over the range from 100 meters to 1,000 meters with the step of 500 meters, and the TMRD iterates over the range from 3 days to 1 month with the steps of about 5 days. Then the median points is defined as 3 points for this experiment. The result here is the selection of the optimal spatial-temporal scales for clusters. To clarify, although we get every result from a set of the parameters, we just choose 4 groups to compare, and these 4 groups representing the range of the spatial-temporal scales from small to large. So you can see in every group we can get the median dB index, which means the best performance of the methods. However, we just consider the group B, which is 500 meters in 3 days, are the optimal scales in this study area, because it's the numbers of clusters in such scales is appropriate, and is about 233 crime clusters. However, in the group A, which is based on the 100 meters and 3 days, we just can expect 16 clusters, and we just get 2 clusters detected based on 1,000 meters and 20 days in the group C. And in addition, all the index values of the clustering results from the ST optics is normally lower than the ones from STDB scan, and you can see the orange line is lower than the blue line overall, which denotes the performance of ST optics is better than STDB scan in retrieving the crime classes in this study area. So we output the result based on the ST optics, which from the 500 meters and 3 days as the optimal scales in Vancouver City, in which we get the 233 crime clusters incorporating roughly 900 incidents are considered, and you can see all the space-time crime clusters are concentrated on the northern area of the city. So we give a simple description of the characteristics of the crime hotspots known as the crime clusters. Here we utilize the conflict hall as a representative of the area of the spatial-temporal crime clusters. From the table 1, we can expect the crime incidence number is quite low, and the day period is short as 5 days as the mean value, and the area is quite small when comparing the whole study area. That means the spatial-temporal crime hotspot is short-term and low and the small area, which is quite correspondent with the previous criminological studies. Then the conclusion here is this study has presented an approach to identify the optimal scales for space-time crime clusters by comparison the performance index called the DB index. We choose the 500 meters and 3 days as the appropriate scales in this study area, and it's based on the ST optics. Further, overall speaking, the ST optics reveals a better performance than the STDB scan, and the limitation and future work is although we get the result from this experiment, however, it's still naive that the evaluation of crime clustering only considering the inter and intra distance across the clusters. So in the future work, the policing interest related factors such as the similarity or the homogeneity from the offender places and victims will be involved in such experiments to choose the appropriate scales. Okay, so thank you for listening.
Thank you very much, Tongxin. That was good keeping to time there. So we do have some time for questions for Tongxin, just following up on his presentation there. If people want to get to their chat box and start typing, I will, to give time for people to do that, ask the first question here. Why did you choose the location that you chose for the data, Vancouver? And the other question that I've got related to that is, what did you obviously done some very interesting work there, but how did you implement that? What kind of computing context were you using to do this work?
Thank you for your question. For the first question, we use the Vancouver dataset because it's open sourced and it is point-based crime dataset, so it can be it can be achieved by the clustering methods. Actually, there are another and a lot of the datasets such as the Chicago dataset, and but I in my case, but as part of my work, the Vancouver is a case study area, which is compared to another dataset from Beijing City. So that's my point to choose this dataset. So for the second questions, what I think you mean the methods I used.
Yeah, just wanted to know how
Experiment.
you implemented them. You know what you were using.
Yeah. Cause for the main purpose of using the density-based clusters, because we can develop and build the cluster level characteristics for the crime hotspots, not point level. But the statistical process can't get a distinct shape and density or the boundary of the crime clusters. So in my future work, I embedded different features from the place, victim, offender to describe the crime concentration in space and time to assist the crime intervention tactics.
Were you using your own software here, Tongzhen, or were you drawing on any particular libraries, or what environment were
Um,
you working in?
I all of the work are implemented by the Python, so maybe relating to some package called GeoPandas. Oh, and yes, it is all about the spatial analysis packages implemented in the Python environment.
Okay, that's great. Any other questions for Tongzhen? And Tongzhen, are you doing this as part of a degree study? Are you doing are you enrolled for a degree, or what is your role at UCL?
I'm a PhD student
Okay,
right now.
okay, good, good.
Thank you.
Well, we've got a very reticent group here who do not, obviously questions is finding it hard. So I think what we'll do, we've got 5 minutes left in the session here. Trying to keep time to time. Oh, hang on, we've got a late entry for a question. Good. Let's just deal with that. I was going to open it more broadly to use up the time, but a question that has just come in from Dzu is there any possibility that the optimal scale of crime cluster actually reflects the movement range of the criminals? That's a really good question. I was thinking of that myself. That's a great question.
Okay, thank you for this question. This is a great question and a very challenge because in terms of the movement range of the criminals, it's called the topic is called the geographic profiling in crime science research. So and in terms of the optimal scales of crime classes, I think from the it is possible and can be defined by the algorithms from the scales of the optimal scales of the movement. But in my research, I didn't implement such topic because the data should be incorporating the offender's home address and the crime location, crime incidence location. So I think the data is quite difficult to get, and I think I will do more work about this if I get the data. Thank you.